Bitcoin is having a surge at the moment post the US election, and right now we are looking to understand why Bitcoin is taking over finance with Brian DeMint, the best-selling author of Bitcoin Evangelism and Parallel. It's good to have you with us on the program. Where do things currently stand with Bitcoin's role in the financial world? Let's start off.
Well, where it stands on a macro level is in a manner that people don't fully understand, and that's why there's so much mystery wrapped around it. The price movements that everybody's seeing right now, earlier today, Bitcoin hit a new all-time high. It's because of sovereign wealth funds. At least this is the word on the street, and I have it on good, reliable sources that this is actually happening. Saudi companies, Qatar companies, and wealth funds are actually diving in. Not only that, we have international legislators reaching out to Bitcoin policy experts here in the United States to help them write their Bitcoin legislation. So not only do we see activity on the legislative front with governments, we see it on the sovereign wealth fund side of things, and then we also see it on the publicly traded markets as well. People are trying to get in. They're seeing what companies like MicroStrategy are doing by having a cash flow positive business paired with a Bitcoin treasury strategy, and people are trying to mimic that. It's quite possible they'll be able to mimic it. They won't be the first mover like a MicroStrategy, but people are seeing the writing on the wall. And if I'm a relatively unknown publicly traded company, what's the best way for me to start looking like I'm one of the S&P 500? It's to adopt a MicroStrategy Bitcoin policy. So we're seeing on all fronts, publicly traded companies, wealth funds, government legislative, it's all happening right now. And there's a lot of pressure on the market because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's in store for Bitcoin, would you say, in the near term, if we can look a little closer to where we're at the moment?
Well, people tend to have a short-sighted view with the way that Bitcoin works. One of the few things that people don't understand about Bitcoin, and your audience probably does, or a more highly informed audience, but people don't understand that there are only 21 million Bitcoin in the entire world. There's not even that many yet, but there will only ever be 21 million. It's measured in dollars. Dollars are something that are increasing every single day. So that equation, the numerator of that equation keeps growing while the denominator stays the same. It doesn't change. And the public doesn't seem to have priced that in yet. And let me give you an example. People believe that because Bitcoin's gotten to 80,000, 90,000, perhaps 100,000 right around the corner, that it can't go up from there. We have this idea that we're too late because they heard about people that bought Bitcoin for $100 or $1,000. So 100,000 must mean that I'm too late. Well, here's the deal. When Bitcoin gets to new all-time highs, like in December of 2017, it reached $10,000 for the first time. It took about 8 years for that to happen. It added the next $10,000, so it got another $10,000 bigger to $20,000 in just 17 days. Bitcoin has this ability to have these astronomical leaps in really, really short periods of time, specifically because of its finite nature, only being 21 million.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where the phrase volatility comes from. When it goes, it goes. But how do you see Bitcoin's future 12 months from now, Brian, for those who are keeping tabs on this?
Yeah, well, what I will tell you is we spent a few months back with Dennis Porter from Satoshi Action Fund. We actually went to every door within the House of Representatives and the Senate in the United States Capitol, and we hand-delivered a copy of the Bitcoin Standard, which is kind of known as the Bible of Bitcoin, if you will. We hand-delivered that to every legislator in the building, and I'll tell you what, these guys are thirsty. They are hungry. They're chomping at the bit to understand Bitcoin because they not only see it as a risk for their reputation, or they don't see it as a risk for their reputation any longer. They actually see it as a net positive for their reputation or even for their constituents. They're trying to attach their names to bills that are pro-Bitcoin bills. So where are we in the next 12 months? Well, I believe about 6 months from now, we're going to have probably about a dozen pieces of pro-Bitcoin legislation in the United States Congress that is going to be bipartisan supported. So it's not just the Republicans, it's the Democrats as well that are trying to attach their names to this. And there's no resistance anymore for pro-Bitcoin legislation. It's the minority, excuse me. There's no resistance. There's a small resistance, and it's not the popular resistance anymore. Bitcoin has gotten to where it is over the last 16 years, kind of in spite of governments. Now, governments are on the side of Bitcoin. It's pretty crazy to think where Bitcoin goes. And I think that's a big movement.
Absolutely, and of course we've been covering it since 2020, watching it rise and fall and rise again, and of course the uptake and the integration from officials and governments alike. But Brian, is there anything you want to leave us with just before I let you go in terms of what people need to be looking out for?
Yeah, well, we have a really interesting David and Goliath comparison if you want to look at what countries have done when it comes to Bitcoin adoption. Germany held earlier this year, they had several thousand Bitcoin that they had confiscated through enforcement actions. They sold all of that Bitcoin this year. They didn't keep a single Bitcoin. The third biggest economy in the world, Germany, sold all of their Bitcoin, and they sold it at $57,000. So even today, they missed out on a 63% gain. Now you have on the flip side, you have somebody like El Salvador, the 104th largest economy in the world, and they have over 500% gains on the coins that they've been stacking over the last 18 months. And certainly there's probably some more coins that they have earlier on. So if you're David in this world and you're a smaller country and you're trying to play with the big boys, you can say, look at what El Salvador did, a country of 6 million people. They have a Bitcoin treasury that rivals their GDP. Or you could do what Germany did, one of the big boys, and you can fumble the football before you get in the end zone.
Yeah, Brian, very well said by you. I appreciate you jumping up on the program, giving us a hit about where this cryptocurrency stuff is at. Appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
And of course, thank you to all of you for tuning in. Hopefully you've learned something about the state of play when it comes to Bitcoin. It is incredible to see the meteoric rise only continue for the moment, but we'll of course be keeping a close eye on it right here on Ticker. Be well.
You're watching Ticker.